everybody. Welcome back to Crimes Untold. I'm your host, Liz, and today we're going to be covering more unidentifieds that have recently been identified. If you are new here, welcome to my podcast. I am also a YouTuber. My handle over there is Liz Austin, x Crimes Untold, and each kind of podcast that I released, or each episode I released, there will be a video that goes along with it, so you can see how socially awkward I am while talking to you guys, my microphone, my computer, all at the same time. So stick around if you enjoy how weird I am, and like to listen to some good true crime. Now, for today, we're going to be talking about a few more John or Jane Does that have been identified as of 2023. To kick things off, we're going to be talking about Charlotte Roberta Henry. So, on December 22nd of 1974, the body of a woman was found by a group of men that were just kind of like simply on their way back to a chalet in the Gatlinburg Ski Lodge area. So, one of the men would call the police and report finding the body. So, upon the scene, after the police get there, upon arrival on the scene, they saw that this was a remote area. And that seemed as though it wasn't traveled through as frequently. And it is just east of where the tramway is for the ski lodge. Due to the state of decay or decomposition of the body, the Sevier County medical examiner needed help in the possible identification of this woman. There was an autopsy done, and this case was assigned with the number 74-11. I will say on the report of her autopsy, there is no official cause of death listed, which is unusual, but I believe I possibly should have just stated that her death was undetermined due to the state of decomposition, the state of her remains. So in 2021, her remains were sent to Othram for further analysis, and this would lead them to possible relatives that were in Arkansas. A sister of this relative was reported missing in August of 1974, and this woman was last believed to be in Tennessee. This Jane Doe would be identified as Charlotte Roberta Henry, who was last seen by her relatives when they were at Charlotte's father's funeral in April of 1974. Her family had last received correspondence from Charlotte in August of 1974 with the address of 2124 Vinton in Memphis, Tennessee. The Gatlinburg Police Department are determined to solve this case and most importantly give her family clarity when it comes to Charlotte's last days. This case is still being investigated at this time. Next we're going to be talking about the Pend Oreille Jane Doe. Hopefully I said that right. It was announced by the Pend Oreille County Sheriff's Office that the partial human skull found on November 28th of 1982 was finally identified as that of Mildred Hubertz. At the time of her disappearance in 1968, she was just 59 years old. And she went missing from St. Ignatius, which is a small town in Idaho. Her skull was found in a wooded area near Newport, Washington, which is about a 4-hour drive from St. Ignatius. When it was examined, it was determined that the cause of death more than likely was blunt force trauma. And it could have been caused by a rock, a tree, or a baseball bat. But it was later observed or believed that she may have been stabbed in the face as well. They were able to determine that the skull belonged to the woman that possibly was aged between 30 to 40, and that her body had been there for quite the period of time, between a month to about 6 years prior to her discovery. So when the crew searched the surrounding areas, they ended up finding a Revlon Rouge compact, a small flashlight, and a pair of gold-filled opera glasses. So very significant things that they found. Later searches of the area would turn up several crochet hooks, large crochet needles or knitting needles, manicure scissors, and a silver pillbox with UEX engraved on it. So after years of nothing coming of this discovery, absolutely nothing, the skull was placed in a box and was stored away. That was until 1999. When a former undersheriff found the skull and just started looking into it, where did this come from? Trying to find the origin of this skull. So March of 2017, county officials for Pend Oreille sent the skull to a state forensics anthropologist's office of Washington with hopes that they would be able to obtain DNA that they weren't able to back in 1982 during the initial exam of this skull. At this time as well, they were also able to add the skull into NamUs, which is a National Missing and Unidentified Persons System. With the success of a DNA extraction, they then were able to try and match this skull to someone that was hopefully in the database, but there was no matches. But in September of 2022, they then were able to work with Othram to hopefully find out who this person was. They were able to develop a profile of which they then put onto Family Tree DNA and GEDmatch, and this is where they were able to match this skull to the great-granddaughter of Mildred Christine Hubertz. Her official identification was made on March 31st of 2023. Finally, after 41 years, she has her name back. Now, if anyone has any information in regards to her disappearance, please call 509-447-1911, which is to contact Sergeant Mitch Parnell for the Pend Oreille County Sheriff's Office. Last but not least, for today's episode, we're going to be talking about the girl with the scorpion tattoo, which I find to be an awesome Jane Doe name, by the way. So, the remains of a woman who was found beaten, strangled, and burned in a wooded area in Staten Island on September 20th, 1991. So she was found on this day. This was the girl with the scorpion tattoo. This location is in a patch of weeds off of the road that is across from the South Beach Psychiatric Center in the South Beach neighborhood. So this set of remains, like I mentioned, would become known as the girl with the scorpion tattoo. So when they found her, she was handcuffed with her face up. Near her at the scene was a bodywork style hammer that had Lloyd L engraved on it. While in autopsy, it's believed that she was repeatedly struck by this hammer from the body shop that was found near her, and her body was still smoldering when she was found. This to me screams as a cover-up. She was determined to have medium-length curly brown hair, brown eyes, and a distinct scorpion tattoo on her right butt cheek. It is believed that she was left at this location just the night prior around 6 p.m. The clothing that was on her was that of a black 3/4 length dress with a pink collar and a pocket, and it was a knit type of fabric. She had white Tom McCann sneakers on, which was a size 8, a black G-string with multicolored flowers, a white bra, a gold herringbone necklace, a gold rope chain necklace, and a ring that had a small watch face on it that was possibly black in color. She also had a pack of Newport cigarettes and 30 cents in change on her as well. So in 2019, the start of DNA forensic genealogy basically started. With the help of Othram, they then were able to identify this Jane Doe as Christa Belusko, who at the time of her death was working for a clothing shop in New Jersey. So the dress she was actually wearing and found in was from a line in the store that she was working at and sold at that clothing store. So just a few weeks prior to her death, she was actually staying at the Airy Lodge in Mount Pocono, Pennsylvania. But her last known address was in Clifton, New Jersey. This was just a few months after she told her family that she was moving to Florida in July of 1991. Her family simply just thought she was in Florida and that she was okay. But that's not all. She wasn't staying at this lodge alone. Oh no. When they got in contact with her family, when officials got in contact with her family, that's when they realized Christa Nicole Belusko, who was 2 at the time, was with her mother at the Airy Lodge. And the last time she was seen with her mother was just a week prior to September 20th. So right before the death of her mother, but her disappearance date is also listed as September 20th of 1991, because after this date or the week prior, nobody has seen her since. So upon identifying this Jane Doe as Christine, obviously, the authorities learned about Christa, and they had no idea that she had a daughter whatsoever. So Christa's profile on the Charley Project lists her as an endangered missing child, and there's also an age progression. As of this year, she would be 33 years old. If anyone has any information about Christa, please contact the Richmond County District Attorney's Office at 718-876-6300. Again, if anybody has information about Christa Nicole Belusko and her disappearance, please contact the Richmond County District Attorney's Office at 718-876-6300. DeKalb County Jane Doe was found on September 16th of 1993. She was identified on March 22nd of 2023, identified publicly. So this Jane Doe was identified using DNA sequencing and the help of Othram. After a $500,000 grant, she was found on Ranchwood Drive in Tucker, Georgia, near Equality Inn. Her cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma. This woman is 52-year-old Rebecca Burke, or Becky Burke as she went by. When she was found, it was believed that whomever killed her hid her there behind an electrical unit in the wooded area behind the motel and what is now a vacant medical office. It's now a different motel. Her body was in a state of such advanced decomposition that it was very hard for them to determine a lot of things that happened to her while she was still alive prior to death. Basically, this means that she was approximately killed anywhere between 2 weeks to 3 months or possibly 6 months before her body was found. Unfortunately, when her body was recovered, no identification was found. But they did see that she had a hip replacement, underwent pretty extensive dental work. Her maxilla and orbital rim were fractured, and it's entirely possible that her neck was broken or fractured as well, hence the blunt force trauma. It is well known that the person of interest in this case is Larry Dwayne Hall, who was a suspect in up to 45 different murders or disappearances during the 80s and 90s. Although at the time he was in a North Carolina federal prison for the kidnapping and murder of Jessica Roach in 1993. It is entirely unclear if he still is a potential suspect in the death of Rebecca Burke. A press conference was held in March this year via 11 Alive, which is a channel local to Georgia, and it was announced through the district attorney's office that when it came to this cold case, and that we figured out her identity. The case of Becky Burke wouldn't have been solved without the help of this grant, or should I say, the identity of Becky Burke wouldn't have been known without the grant, and that of any other Jane or John Does that have been identified with the help of this grant. During this press conference as well, it was discussed that Becky also went by 2 other last names of McChesney and Barnes, and she was missing from Cobb County, Georgia. So at this current time, the district attorney has 27 other unidentified cases that they want to identify using this grant that was awarded to them. They will be holding a DNA drive on Saturday, May 20th, 2023, between the hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. So there possibly will be help from the community with identifying these people. If you or anyone you know has any information about any cold case or unidentified cases in DeKalb County, please call the cold case tip line for DeKalb County District Attorney's Office at 404-371-2444. Again, if you have any information about any of these cold cases or unidentified cases in DeKalb County, please call the cold case tip line for DeKalb County District Attorney's Office at 404-371-2444. Last, for today's video, we're going to be talking about Amanda Newcomb, or the Maury County Jane Doe. So on November 16th of 2020, the remains of a woman was found near Columbia, Tennessee, in a remote wooded area near Hood Road. This set of remains had the following items on or near the body: blue boxer briefs, black loafers, shorts, but they could also be pants. This was kind of unclear. Some type of clothing item that covers legs, basically. A cell phone, a North Face jacket that was black and red, and headphones. After the discovery of this Jane Doe, they tried to cross-reference her with other missing women local to the area, but nothing proved fruitful. In November of 2021, the local sheriff's department started working with a private lab that could process samples of DNA for genealogical purposes. This lab was in Texas. More than likely, it was Othram as well. About a year into processing, the lab was able to produce a list of those who possibly were related to this woman. Now, with the information, basically, what you do is build a family tree and try to get the most recent relative for the Jane Doe. They were successful in doing this, so what happened is they would have to contact them, ask them about their findings, basically a straight up cross-reference of, is this accurate? Do you have a missing family member? And so on and so forth. And then they would conduct a DNA test. After having a successful match, they then were able to confirm that this Jane Doe was who they thought it was. And this was on January 26th of this year. A lot of people don't understand that when you do genetic genealogy, you have to inform the family first before it's publicly announced. So that's why there's a jump between when the family knows and when the public knows. So she was formally identified to the family in January of this year, but it didn't become public until March 24th. And that's when Amanda Newcomb would be publicly identified as the Oreille County Jane Doe on March 24th, 2023. Amanda Newcomb went missing from Columbia, Tennessee in 2018. So at this time, they are still actively investigating her case, but if anyone has any information, you can call the local sheriff's office with the numbers I have in my description box below, because there's 3 different numbers that you can choose from. Again, if anybody or even if you know anyone or if you know anything about the death of Amanda Newcomb, aka the Oreille County Jane Doe, please use the numbers that are listed in my description box. That, my friends, is the next set of Jane Doe or John or Jane Doe, basically unidentified cases that have been identified as of 2023.